Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Project SWA. I'm really excited to be here again with you today. And today we are going to do something really fun. We are going to make a three-dimensional object. So we are going to be focusing on the art of China and Korea today. We are going to make a Chinese or Korean plum vase. Okay, what does that even mean? So in Chinese, it's called a Meiping. In Korean, it's Meiping-Maebyeong. And there were beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, large porcelain vessels. They were originally meant to hold plum or ginseng wine. But as time went on, people had these beautifully decorated, porcelain vases, and they thought, what can we actually do with this? So they started saving them and using them specifically for flowering tree branches. It was just so lovely. And we know that Asian culture is so deeply connected to nature. There's poetry about nature. There's nature included in almost all of their artwork. There's songs and theater dedicated to things in nature. So why not repurpose these already beautifully decorated vases and turn them into something even more gorgeous for our homes? Put a flowering branch in it. So these are actually kind of incredible. Again, I said that they originated in China and Korea, which makes a lot of sense because China and Korea are geographically in the same area of the world and they're actually linked by the land. There's no separation like Japan is an island, it's off the coast. So Japan was very isolated. And some of these motifs made their way to Japan and came from Japan to the mainland. But again, because China and Korea actually are linked on the lands, they share a lot of similar motifs and styles, a lot of the similar architecture. So again, when I refer to one or the other, I'm just trying to shorten our time and use one phrase. So again, the Meiping or the Maebyeong was the Chinese or Korean plum vase, and they were developed mostly around the late 13th century and up into the mid part of the 14th century. So they went through several dynasties, and that means that they also went through several different techniques. Originally, they were just stoneware. Not a whole lot of decoration, but as technology improved and these wonderful craftsmen started developing new techniques and more styles, we saw different glaze patterns. One of the most popular glaze patterns is the blue and white. And so when we think of ancient Chinese pottery or dynasty Chinese pottery, we always think of the blue and white. If anyone has seen the Wedgwood willowware, you know that that's a very popular blue and white pattern. And it was the same for these vases. So this is what we're going to be making today. So we are going to make a three-dimensional vase. And you can see I put some of these little twigs that I found in my yard. Now, up here in northern New York, it's not quite spring. Calendar says it's spring, but we're still dealing with some snow flurries. So we don't have anything blooming. We don't even have leaves quite yet. So my branches are bare, but maybe where you live, you can go out and find something that has some buds on it, and that'd be really nice to put in your vase. So what you're going to need for today is some simple items. You're going to need a sheet of paper. You're going to need a toilet paper tube because that is actually the inside of our vase. This is what's holding this up. So all that TP that you stocked up on, now you have a purpose for it. Okay, you're going to need some crayons or markers. I used a combination of both. You're also going to need some glue. So again, things that we have around our house, and I'm really excited to make this project with you today. So let's go. Okay, so for today's lesson, you can see I'm using another sheet of white paper. I'm using just plain computer paper this time because we don't need it to be super thick. I have my little cup of glue. I have a paintbrush. I have a pencil and a marker. And I also have several blue crayons. The glaze that was used at the time, the white and blue, was really popular. So I have a variety of blues here. You might want to select one that's more of a blue-green, and that would be fine because the glaze sometimes was a seal-it-on glaze, and that has a green tint. There's also some true blues, some gray blues, some light blues. A variety of blue is fine. I have my toilet paper tube, and I went outside and I picked a few little twigs that had fallen in my side yard. And I think these are from a lilac bush, which is kind of nice because they have frilly little elements. I like that. So starting with your white paper, go ahead and fold it exactly in half. When I tell my students to fold things in half, I have little sayings. So if you were to fold it in half this way, I say that's like a taco. You know, you can hold it in your hands like a taco. If you fold it this way, it's like a hot dog bun. So fold it in half like a taco. Now, what you should do is put your tube down on top of your paper so you know about how tall your tube is. If you're using a paper towel roll, yours might be a little bit taller, especially if you've cut it. But the biggest thing that you want to take stock of is how much is this going to stick out. So you can see I have quite a bit of room up here. When I get towards the neck of my Meiping-Maebyeong, I want to go ahead and make some marks about how wide this is because I don't want it to be wider than my tube. So go ahead and you make some marks. I see I made a couple marks here. Now I'm, again, taking my pencil, I'm just gonna draw the general shape. So the Meiping-Maebyeong definitely has a much shorter neck, but the Meiping has a little bit of a longer neck, and then it has these really robust shoulders. So go ahead and draw this out. Just have your kids sketch to the best of their ability, and don't worry if it's perfectly symmetrical. And this vase actually didn't really have very much of a foot to begin with, so we're just going to leave it flat. Now, taking your scissors, I want you to cut this out. And with these cutouts, these are great items that can go into your scrap box. All right, so again, I have my marks. I know that this part is wider because what we're gonna do with our tube is use this as the armature to hold our vase upright. So I'm, again, gonna move all these little extra pieces that I don't need right now to this side, and that can go into my scrap box later. So now what I want to do, because I have these pencil lines here, I could erase, but it's going to take time. I'm just going to fold this inside out so that the pencil marks are on the inside and I don't have to worry about it. Taking a crayon, or maybe you want to start with your marker, start to draw some designs. Earlier we talked about motifs. So motifs are designs that were typically found on the Meiping and the Maebyeong vases. So cloud-like scrolls, peony or flower blossoms leaves. Sometimes in the later dynasties, you would see, you know, bamboo kind of scroll work here, kind of like the Greek key, or you might see birds and swallows. And then even later series, you started to find writing, poems, and that sort of thing on there. So again, draw some elements. I think I might go for some cloud-like scrolls. And, you know, be free with it. Let your kids just kind of explore some elements. If they had one of these vases, what would they want to see? If anyone is familiar with chinoiserie, this is really similar in motif. You know, chinoiserie was always incorporating flowers and branches and birds. So again, really similar. And the reason for that being is nature is highly regarded and valued in most Asian cultures. So, you know, you find priceless screens and pottery dedicated to natural elements. Poetry was written about it. It was just so important in the culture. Okay, so I filled up a lot of the spaces here with this crayon. So now at this point I can switch to a marker and maybe I'm gonna try a different motif, like maybe I wanna add some leaves or some flowering branches or flower blossoms. I can also come up into the neck here. Once I complete this side, I'm actually gonna turn it over and do either the same design or a different design, but still only using blue on the opposite side. So take this time again to go ahead and fill in your vase in entirety. I'm actually going to add some shading with a different crayon just to try to give my flower a little bit of depth here. The pottery and ceramic masters working at this time were just absolute pioneers. They were developing techniques and skills that no one had ever seen before, especially in porcelain. Porcelain is incredibly hard, therefore it's really durable. But the really interesting thing about porcelain is it's really lightweight. It's kind of magic. Up until this point, they were mostly only using clay and stoneware, which it's durable, but it's very heavy. So porcelain allowed them to create beautiful works of art that were not super heavy. And that way, not only could they make them bigger, but they were going to be durable. And as the demand for porcelain products increased, it moved beyond royalty. It moved beyond the palace walls or, people of importance that could afford these things. And there became a demand for these products in domestic homes, which is really incredible. And even more impressive was the fact that it wasn't just for dining use anymore or storage. It became, necessary to have decorative objects. People wanted to put these items on display. They wanted to show that they had refined cultural taste and that they had the means to afford these items. Because again, just because it was moving its way out of the palace didn't mean it wasn't still expensive. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. I have some nice scrolls. I have some peony flowers. I think I'm going to leave the neck blank, just trying to go with a more traditional design. So now what I could do is I could open it up entirely and try to take these lines and blend them over here. Or I could just close it and do a whole nother design. It's up to you. I think I might add something special on this side and incorporate some of these elements. So maybe I want to add a bird or some bamboo or a willow branch. Maybe some bamboo would be nice. You can see the nice thing about using this marker here is I have the ability to push down when I first make my mark and lift up the marker as it goes out. So really mimics a brush stroke, which I find particularly pleasing, especially because at this time, these ceramics were hand painted. They didn't have transfer techniques quite yet. So everything was done by hand, which is really kind of incredible when you consider the amount of pottery these people produced. I mean, it wasn't something like, you know, mass produced. Every single piece was handmade. They didn't have machines to do this. So I find that really impressive that they were able to create such a large body of work under such handmade craftsmanship. And under such limits of technology. I mean, it's really kind of amazing. All right, so again, adding some more of these scrolls from the other side back, because I do want my vase to be, you know, at least complementary on both sides. If you want to do yours opposite on either side, that's totally fine. It's personal preference, but I do like some harmony in my work. It's kind of exciting when you think about peonies in Asian art. So, you know, a lot of us have peonies in our yard. They're used as wedding flowers, are incredibly popular in the United States. But they are actually from Asia, which is pretty impressive considering the fact that they're so ubiquitous across the globe now. There's a lot of flowers and plants that come from other places, and sometimes I think we lose that heritage of where these plants came from. It's kind of fun to trace their roots back. Okay, now if I open these up, I can see that the designs are different on each side, but they definitely work together. I have my cloud-like swirls. I have these light bluish gray peonies. I have these green and blue peonies. I've got an array, and again, regardless of the fact that they are different, they are working together. So now I'm going to flip it over, and this is where we get to have some fun. So I want you to take your tube and your glue. Go ahead and coat one side of your tube with glue. You don't have to do the whole side because really only one small strip of this is going to make contact with your paper. So go ahead, coat it with glue. You can see I used quite a bit of glue. You want to line this bottom edge up here with the bottom of your vase. Lay it down. Now use two hands and count to 30. Lightly pushing down. Don't push so hard that the tube squishes. We still want this to be round, but just gently push down and count to 30. Okay, that's about 30 seconds there. So now, again, taking more glue. You guys know I love glue. Hold your tube with one hand and spread glue on the top of this side of the tube. Again, liberal with the glue, but you, again, only really in that one area. You don't have to go bonkers with it on the whole tube. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, close your vase cutout around the top of your tube. You are going to have to pull a little bit because we want these two edges lined up together. Using one hand, hold these edges closed. Use your other hand and push down on the top of your paper. This time, we're going to count to 100. All right, we are almost there. A few more seconds to go. Okay, now very gently remove your hands. And if you did it just fine and applied enough pressure, this should stick. But the only issue here is that this edge has not been glued. So now I want you to take your vase and hold it like a taco upside down. We've got to glue this edge here. So taking your brush, if you have little hands and it's difficult for you to do this, you can leave it on the table. Just again, use one hand as a guide to make sure that what you've already glued doesn't come undone. You can peel this back, add glue to this lip. Then I want you to pinch them together. And again, we're going to count to 100. All right, so we're getting there. It's feeling pretty good. I can feel that it's really kind of set up, and I'm thinking everything's pretty stuck. If I touch all of my sides, everything looks pretty good. Now, right now, if you were to set it up, it will stand because we're using this tube as a support. This is our armature. Armature is just a fancy word for support system inside of something. So anytime you're building a sculpture that you're not pulling from, you're adding to an additive sculpture instead of retractive. We're not carving, we're adding to it. Almost always there's a support system. If you've done paper mache, you know that you have to use something inside to put the paper mache on. If you've used a balloon before, you put the paper mache on the balloon, and after the paper mache fully hardens, you can pop the balloon and remove the armature. In this case, we're not going to remove the armature or it won't stand up. So you can go ahead and stand up your vase. Now, if you wanted to close these corners with a little bit more glue, you could. My only concern is if you come all the way up to the neck, it's going to naturally close itself off at the top and you're not going to have a way to insert your branches. So if you want to close the shoulders, you can. You can leave them open if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and close mine. So again, a little more glue, not a whole lot of glue. You can see I'm just doing a little bit on the inside of each shoulder. I know for once I'm telling you not a lot of glue. That's kind of crazy, right? Okay, go ahead and pinch the shoulders and count to 30. Okay, now our shoulders are mostly closed and it's going to be a little wrinkly right now because there's so much moisture in the liquid glue. It will smooth out over time. So if you are concerned about some of these bumps and ripples here, it'll be okay. Again, this is oh, look, I didn't hold it long enough. It popped open. See, sometimes 30 seconds isn't quite long enough. Sometimes it needs a little extra TLC. Okay, that's feeling good. Probably I was also fiddling with it a little much. Now, if you wanted to close this section down here, you could, but again, you don't have to. Okay, so our vase is looking pretty good. Now you can see the neck on this is really long, and this side just really does not want to stay shut. So I'm just going to let it go. It's fine, honestly. And if I wanted to trim it down, I could. And I kind of feel like I want to a little bit. It might relieve some of the tension that's causing that to pop open. So instead of cutting one side at a time and having to fiddle with it for being uneven, I'm going to take both of my pieces, line them up on the edge, and trim them together. Yeah, I think that works a little bit better. Now let's see if this will actually stay down. I might have to hold it for a full minute. Okay, so now I finally have my shoulder glued, and I have all of these little twigs that I picked up in my yard. So again, sticking with the theme of the plum vase, because that's what this was used for. It was used to hold plum branches. I'm just going to lightly stick them in so that they connect with the tube. Now, if you're using really long and tall branches, you probably want to put some rocks or a little bag of sand down here in the bottom so it doesn't tip over, because this is only so tall. I mean, the base is pretty stable. I think you can get away with something fairly long. Now, you might have to pick off some of these little twigs on the side so that you can further insert it down. Yeah, so you can have a fun little hunt in your yard looking for interesting things to put in there. So right now, up here in New York, nothing is blooming right now. So I just have these little twigs that don't have much on them. But you can see they have a really interesting shape. I like all these little bits that come off the sides. So as we start to get some flowering branches in a couple months, let's be real, it is Northern New York, then you might add different things to it. But for now, I think this is really charming. You can put this on a windowsill, you can put it next to your kid's bed, and again, have fun with it. Maybe find some interesting things to put in there. So I'm going to tilt it down so you can actually kind of see my finished product here. And that is our Meiping, or in Korean, our Maebyeong plum vase. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will have another lesson posted for you on Thursday. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I am loving your feedback. I'm loving seeing what you're creating at home, photos of your children working, and I even have some senior citizens that are working on this in their nursing facilities right now while everything's pretty much on lockdown. So keep sending me your pictures. Stay tuned. I will have another episode on Thursday. And if you have any specific culture or artist or style of art that you would like me to explore and lead a lesson on, send me a message. I am all ears. Have a wonderful day. Everybody stay safe, and I will see you on Thursday. Bye.